Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we will be designing a game from a random game prompt in 5 minutes or less. So if you are new to these style of videos, we have our fun tool that we like to utilize from the letsmakeagame.net, where they have a game prompt generator. So if we jump over into this screen, I think we are showing on screen. Yep. So they have this tool called the game idea generator, where it will prompt you with a genre, rule, setting, and theme for you to design around. And so what's going to happen is we'll click the generate button, and we'll then set our phone to a 5-minute timer and kind of ramble our way through a design comment. And once the alarm sounds on our phone, we'll wrap up with recapping where we got to. So let's generate a new prompt. So the genre is a puzzle platformer. The rule is build the level you play. The setting is medieval, and the theme is individual versus society. That is a juicy game prompt. And so now, without further ado, hi YouTube, hi Mick. We will set the 5-minute alarm, our timer, and start rambling. All right, so we got puzzle platformer. So that I really think should be polyomino. Paul can't write, can't do nothing. Let's clean that up. So polyomino. And so for those of you who aren't familiar with that word, it's basically Tetris pieces. Is where puzzle platformer leads me to. The build the level you play. So that I would say is medieval and individual versus society. And so I think I think this would be interesting to do. Everyone has a board state here, and we'll say maybe it's a grid of 5. Interesting way of segmenting it, but everyone has their little board here that potentially is part of a larger player board. And I'm gonna ramble to kind of just get stuff on screen to kind of talk through my thoughts after I have a visual to talk through. And so you have something like this, and maybe you have kind of your stats here. And we have you can hold 4. Something like that. And then maybe everyone gets a character that they play that gives them an action or power or something like that. And this would have that. Sorry, I'm not explaining. I'm trying to get all my thoughts out, and then we'll talk through it. And so this is great, engaging content. I know everyone is very wowed by my ability to entertain the masses while scribbling stuff. We got a polyomino arrow to nothing. So I think we were trying to say that that's Tetris for those that aren't familiar. And we have something like this, other Tetris pieces or smaller polyomino shapes. All right, so build the level you. All right, we got some comments in chat, so let me build the level you play. Genius Square. Yeah, Genius Square is sort of where I'm going with this one. Michaela probably knows that this is a recycled idea from one of the first concepts I had called Poly Pirates, which kind of went nowhere. But I think I have got enough of the concepts down, so we'll pause the timer and talk through what junk I just drew on the screen and figure out if it feels like a game. And so let's make that a W. But our puzzle platformer, build the level you play, medieval, individual versus society. My pitch for this game would be you're taking on the role of a knight trying to court the princess. And how that works is you have your smooth moves to try and get to the castle, which are these polyomino cards. And so this would be a draft and write, I think. I don't know if that is a mechanic that's out there, but that's what we're going with. So what's going to happen at the start of each round, there'll be a card flipped from the card, like the round deck, that has this same setup, but it will populate the board. And so this is where you start. And then this is where the princess lives. And this is the medieval city that you have to kind of navigate your way through. And so there will be spots that are blocked out with you not able to go. And there will be coins and other trinkets that you can pick up throughout the course of the game. And so it will populate kind of different symbols, but the overall premise is that this card will be flipped and it'll show kind of how the board will be seated for the round. And once you know that, everyone will be dealt out 3 cards, and you will do a draft style of picking one to keep and passing. And once you've ended up with the 3 cards that you'll use for the round, you will then place them starting with the starting location. So the first piece has to touch this spot here, and your goal is to be able to make it to the princess to be one of her suitors. And once that happens, you'll cross off. So if we ended up with those 3 shapes, let's see if we even make it to the castle. So we'll kind of put that first shape in here, and we got to remember that this space here and this space here are not available for us to cross. And then, so we got our little zigzag lightning bolt. Oh, we have our little L piece here that we place that crosses these off. And then we can use our little smaller L piece to make it to the princess. And so that is the course that we've made. So we've successfully made it to the princess this round. Making it to the princess would give you bonus victory points. And all of the spaces that you cross through, you would gain the resource bonuses that you passed through to be able to spend in the second part of the phase. And spending those would be able to increase your power level, which maybe would allow you to do different things based on the character that you're pursuing. If you have enough money, you can buy gifts, which are potentially cards that you would tuck under your player board, that if you picked an apple from the tree symbol and made it to the princess this round, you'd get +3 victory points. So you could spend money to purchase gifts and such. And so this would be money. This would be stamina. And so stamina is basically, potentially there are, knightsmen that don't want you to make it to the princess, that if you have to spend them to get through certain, like, not all of the squares in the game would give you bonuses, but there'd be stamina that you have to spend to outwit or outmuscle the guys to get through. You would get your, health. If you have to stay above a certain threshold in order to have the endurance of being one of the many that are competing with the princess and not to get competing for the princess and not to get discouraged. And maybe we only have 3 trackers for the start to figure out. And so this game would be played over 5 rounds, potentially, or we'd still have to figure out the round count, and that would be determined by how many cards are shuffled into this deck and flipped for the round. And we would have to go from there. So to recap, the things we'd still have to figure out is the player power, or the player characters that you're playing as, and what is the incentive for going up this track. We would have to generate the map cards of how they're populated with different symbols that would help with gift purchasing and blockades, and figure out how many different symbols are on the map cards. And then we would have to create a deck of drafting cards of symbols to move with. And so potentially there would be the UX for the character cards, or the user interface, the UI, would have, if we're playing over 5 rounds, there's potentially an ability to upgrade it 3 times, I think maybe makes sense. But you'd have an innate power. And as you can spend something, one of the resources, to figure out what the requirement is to move into the different tiers, those would give you ongoing abilities, like anytime you draft and use the 2-piece, you can use it twice or something like that. So we'd have to come up with at least 4 characters and character powers there to see if it's a 1 to 4 player game. We would probably use games that have existed before this one to figure out all the shapes, so that wouldn't be a huge time sink of figuring out what those shape cards are. And we would then try and table it and see what works. So we'd probably need to come up with the item cards, which we'd have to assign a money cost and kind of the symbol scoring for that. But that's sort of where we got to today with our prompt. So to try and give it a... Why is this frozen? It's not frozen, but it's not wanting to... There we go. So we got that. So to recap, our prompt was a puzzle platformer. The rule was build your own, the level you play. The setting was medieval, and then the theme was individual versus society. So let's see if we satisfied the prompt first. So it's a puzzle platformer, I guess, sort of, in the sense that if you consider these blocked out spaces to be like obstacles, you're trying to get from point A to point B, which is in standard platformers, and we are using polyomino pieces as our puzzle aspect for that. The build the level you play is, so it's randomly generated, and then you're building your own path that you move out through. So I think we've satisfied that. Medieval, I think of princesses, knights, and so I'd give that the thumbs up that worked. And individual versus society. So if we are one of the many suitors of the princess, I think that potentially could finagle into be reasonable as well. So I think we satisfied the prompt. And what we came up with is a round-based game where you're drafting polyomino cards to then draw in your map for the game, which will determine what building the princess is hanging out in and what building you start in, and the map that you have to try and traverse through. And so you'll be playing this over a series of 4 or 5 rounds that you will draft 3 polyomino tiles, use those to map out to gain the symbols and bonuses that you'll get with your track pushing, and hopefully help satisfy your player power. And at the end of each round, you'll have the ability to purchase gift cards for basically additional victory point modifiers based on the number of symbols that you cross through and making it to the princess. And you'll score victory points for every time you reach the princess. And I think that's that. So it's not a full concept, so I'd still have to do some ironing out of the rough patches, but I think this would be something that would be easily testable. I would probably test it in person and just create player boards that you can laminate to use dry erase markers on to test the core concept of this flipping and crossing out. But that is our puzzle platformer. Feel free to comment below what your thoughts are on this mechanic. Is this a game that you'd even be interested in playing? If you like this style of content, I post videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and would love to engage with you in the comments below. And if you liked this video, please subscribe. Have a good one.